Hello everyone, welcome back to my series where I'm talking to my favourite people in the world of trampoline, tumbling and double mini. Today I'm talking to the original trampoline viral sensation and 2008 Olympic Silver Medalist, Jason Burnett. Hi Jason, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Simon. How about yourself?
Not too bad, I'm good. How have you been during this whole lockdown time? Have you been enjoying doing something else with your life?
Yeah, lockdown's been interesting. It's been, it's unfortunate that we don't have the gyms to go in and out of on a regular basis. I've really missed that, of course, as I'm sure every other athlete has. Having that community and having your teammates and your coaches around, or not around, I guess I should say right now, is a really tough thing. So I definitely missed that. But yeah, it's just, I think we're all dealing with it as best we can and trying to stay busy. So I don't know what else you can do.
What state is Canada in at the moment? Is it still in semi-lockdown, or are people started to allowed to go back to sport, or what stage is it in?
Yeah, we are in semi-lockdown. Every province sort of has a bit of a different plan itself. Some are a little more strict than others. I know Eastern Canada is doing really, really well and has next to no cases, I believe, on that. Whereas places like Quebec and Ontario has significantly higher numbers, and even out west in Alberta, BC are creeping up quite quickly as well, which is a little alarming. Masks are pretty mandatory just about everywhere you go these days. But yeah, we're still struggling with the numbers sort of creeping up and up. So gyms aren't very readily accessible. I think maybe there have been some exceptions for national team athletes training for very, very high profile games, stuff like that.
Yes.
But yeah, just your general weekend warriors are pretty much out unless they want to go run around outside. And now that it's wintertime, it's getting a little chilly out here for that. So
yeah, it's a bit different now, isn't it? So I've always followed, I've met you a long time ago in Canada and at Worlds and stuff, and I've always followed your career. I think a lot of people did. So I thought, now's a good time to get chatting to you and see about just different things that people might not know about your career, and just have a chat. So let's go right back to the beginning. How did you get involved and started with trampoline or gymnastics? Which one was it, and how did you get involved?
Yeah, for sure. So I started gymnastics when I was 8 years old, and it was basically a really good outlet for me because my parents, we had a nicer property. It was a couple acres sort of out in the country, and my favorite thing to do was just to climb the trees, and I'd leap down from the top of them. So I think that stressed my parents out a little bit, and they wanted a more controlled environment for me to get that kind of energy out. So they put me in gymnastics class, which I enjoyed. I got to jump around and flip off the bars and learn some tumbling, that kind of stuff. But I also found it was a lot of conditioning just over and over and over again, which wasn't my favorite. But at the end of every gymnastics class, the treat was to go jump on the trampoline for 15 minutes or so. And that's exactly where I wanted to be. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I told my parents this, and they did a little research, and we found a gym called Airborne Trampoline Club, which was actually just a summer camp at the time. So they sent me there for the summer. We'd jump on the trampolines in the mornings and the afternoons, and there'd be some sort of outdoor activity during the day in between. And they started a competitive program shortly afterwards. So I started jumping at Airborne at a very low provincial level, working through backs and brannies. I think we did up to like double back and flippus at that gym. But their ceiling height was only about 16 feet from the trampoline, so it's quite low. And basically I was hanging off the roof by the time I was 10 or 12 or something like that. So at that point, we started looking for another gym with a higher ceiling, which is how we came across Skyriders Trampoline Place. Started jumping there, met Dave Ross, Rosie McLennan, saw Karen and Matt jumping for the very first time. And watching those guys jump just blew my mind. Like, they were doing tricks that I never could have imagined and jumping higher than I thought was possible. So I was just so inspired by that group of people and by that gym that Dave had created. And been there.
Was Dave your coach from the get-go, like from the first session, or did it take a while for you to develop into his group or whatever?
It's hard for me to remember. I know we had some sort of secondary coaches that I worked with for the bulk of my time at the lower levels, but I think one of the interesting things Dave has always done is he's tried to include some of the younger athletes in the, I guess, higher level classes so that they, even if it's just once a week, they get to see what the older athletes are doing and what kind of tricks they're doing, and it gives them something to aspire to. And it can be really exciting to see, people like Matt and Karen doing triple somersaults and Millers and Rudy outs when all you've ever really imagined is a double back before. So your brain starts thinking and it really starts working hard at that point to to start to imagine what you could be doing in a couple of years' time.
And did you find you progressed quite quickly when you went to Skyriders? Did you find your rate of progression just skyrocketed?
Yeah, with the higher ceiling, like there was a lot more opportunity for learning, and with the Super Tramp, there was a lot more opportunity for learning as well, because I had so much more room in the air, and I was quite comfortable in the air. And when you're 12 or 14, which is around the time I was starting at Skyriders, you're absolutely fearless, and you don't have enough intelligence to know what's dangerous or not. You just
have no fear.
Yeah, you just start chucking yourself every which way. And, any suggestion Dave may have had always seemed like a good idea, and most of them were. Of course, we had a few crashes here or there, but it's a big experiment, right?
And did the Super Tramp make much of a difference with your learning? Obviously, it gives you more time, but you still have to have the spatial awareness and the bravery to go for the stuff. Like, it's not like a rig, where a rig, you've got that, you're safe. I remember being on the Super Tramp and being so afraid. But did it make much difference for you?
Yeah, I think it made a huge difference. Luckily, I had sort of that combination of elements you just mentioned. I was, brave enough or stupid enough to try all these tricks. And I had a ton of energy, and I had some spatial awareness from gymnastics and my lower level trampoline training. But Super Tramp was really fantastic because I wasn't strong enough to jump, that high on a regular trampoline yet. So yeah. I may have had, the bravery, the stupidity, or the spatial awareness to do a Triffus, but I wouldn't have been able to I wasn't strong enough to do it on a regular trampoline. Whereas I was strong enough to do it on Super Tramp because it bounces you about 30% higher. So I was able to start practicing all of these higher level skills at a much younger age than most athletes without a Super Tramp will say, just because I didn't have to worry about, I'm not high enough to do this trick safely. I was high enough because Super Tramp was doing a lot of that work for me. So
did it take you long to kind of transfer from the Super Tramp to the normal trampoline? Was that a big process, or was it easy enough? Did it take a long time?
No, I found it went pretty quick. I think because I basically grew up on the Super Trampoline, and going back and forth from Super Tramp to regular tramp or Ross beds, I didn't notice that much of a difference. And I know everyone told me there was a difference, but I think I chose not to acknowledge that, because I felt that was a sort of a mental barrier people put up for themselves. Like, I can do something on Super Tramp, well, I can only do it because I can jump higher over there and it's got a different bounce. So that's why I can't do it on the regular trampoline yet. That always seemed like a bit of an excuse to me not to do, the big trick that you're doing perfectly fine on Super Tramp. There was an excuse not to do it on a regular tramp if you decided they felt different or they bounced really differently. Yeah. So I chose not to acknowledge that, or ignore it as best I could, and would just hop from one to the other.
So, like, you were a senior very, very young. So you mustn't have had that much time competing as a junior athlete. When did you get some success as a junior athlete? Or did you have any success as a junior athlete?
I was always sort of second best as a junior athlete in Canada. There was an athlete from Quebec named Brian Malonja, who had done very, very well at World Age Group Championships. I think he won a couple in like 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe even 15, 16. Like, he was phenomenal for his age. And he always basically kicked my butt in the junior levels. Like, I just wasn't at his level. I joined.
He had the great execution and stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, he was super sharp, very great execution. And he was doing high DD for a junior at that time as well. He was always competing a triff tuck and a Rudy out pike and a full straight. And it was probably like a 14-2 with, 8-4 form or something like that. Like, it was a good routine for, a 15, 16-year-old, say 15, maybe even 20 years ago now, man. But yeah, Brian was phenomenal. So he was always sort of number one, and in our junior levels anyway. And it took me until I was about 18, 19 years old before I really started getting an edge on him. And I think Super Tramp played a big part in that, because I was doing, Brian was still doing, the 15-0, 15-5 maybe. But by the time I was 18, 19, I was doing 18-0s and in practice, and I was ready to compete 16s or 16-2s.
Yeah. Did you do any World Age, or did you do any Junior Pan Ams or anything like that?
Yeah, I did a World Age group in 2001. I was category 15-16, but I broke a metatarsal in my foot a month before. So that it just didn't work out that well for me. I healed in time to compete, but I only got about a week's worth of training in and had to water down my routines quite a bit. So I was really disappointed about that. But But I also remember we had some junior World Cups in 2002 in Edmonton, and I want to say somewhere in the States as well, but now my memory's failing me.
Yeah.
But I just remember from those competitions, that's where I was first really exposed to some of the junior athletes from Russia. Alexei Alichev, I think, was
the DMT guy.
Yeah, he turned into a double mini athlete, but he was a phenomenal junior trampoline athlete as well. And I just remember seeing a lot of like Alexander Moskalenko-ish style form in what he was doing. And, you know, for me at that time, I just hadn't seen that from anyone but Alexander Moskalenko. So it was a really intimidating sort of, I guess, time to be entering those junior levels and to see those international athletes on the stage. But that was
inspiring as well.
Sorry?
But inspiring as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really what pushed me to start doing more skills, to clean up my form. Just knowing what the other athletes out there in the world were doing helps you sort of set your goals and adjust your goals as well.
So when you went senior in 2003, was that your push? Did you want to be a senior, or was it your coaches, or did Canada need that, or were you just done with junior and you wanted to push on?
No, it was everyone's decision, I guess. And I was competing well as a junior, but I was, you know, challenging the seniors at that point as well. And to go senior also meant I'd be nationally funded as well. So that was a nice perk. So I was very excited about that. But also I was just so hungry at the time to like move up the levels. I was a little cocky, definitely thought I was better than I was, but, you know, was just ready to like get out there and, you know, try and take on some of these bigger competitions. There was no doubt in my mind at the time that I was, you know, meant to be there, supposed to be there. And I was just ready to keep on going.
Because it's strange for these days. Like, I think you were 16 or 17 when you did 2003 World Championships in Hanover. Yeah, in Hanover. So I think like it's for now, it would be a kid and you wouldn't really move into that kind of until maybe 18 or 19. So it would have been a big thing for the time.
Yeah, I think I was definitely the youngest on the Canadian team and probably one of the youngest competitors at that World Championships. And that was a good sort of reality check for myself as well. Because I remember I did routines I was very proud of at that competition. And I came 34th, which I wasn't very proud of in the end. But it was like, once again, it was like seeing, you know, Brian Malange jump for the first time, or Alexei Alichev and all these guys who are better than me. It's like a good reality check. And it makes you think, oh yeah, I actually, you know, I'm good in my own gym, but there's all these other people out there in the world who are training differently, training harder, doing bigger, better stuff. So I need to do bigger, better stuff as well. Like I can't sort of get lazy or get complacent where I am. I got to keep pushing the level every chance I get.
And is that what made you hungry for, because it seems to be that your main strategy, obviously execution and stuff, but your big thing, that go big or go home statement that everyone quotes with you, and was difficult to your main strategy? Is that why you pushed on to beat when you kind of realized what everyone else was doing?
A little bit, but I'd say more of that came from watching Matt Turgeon in the gym, and then Dave Ross being really excited about doing big tricks. Because when I think when I entered Skyriders, Matt had already done his 18-0 DD routine, and it was on the wall, and it was way ahead of everybody. And I remember coming in and seeing Matt jump and seeing his name up there, and automatically that was, you know, that was the new level that I was striving for. That was the guy to beat. Even though I was only a scrawny 14-year-old coming into the gym, I was like, okay, that's the highest number. I got to be higher than that number at some day.
And it does, because like there's a lot of gymnasts from your club, like there was Phil Barbero and there was Sam and all those ones who did big skills. Like they did big skills. Was it just that everyone was super talented, or did Dave approach the skills in a certain way that was different to other coaches?
Dave 100% loves to train skills and loves to teach skills. Like that is his passion. Like whether it's just a back tuck and it's like, you know, your 8-year-old doing it in the gym for the first time, or it's, you know, Sam doing front full half pike, a skill and the girl has never, you know, competed or done before. You know, Dave is equally excited to teach both. And that's why Dave always pushed skills. That's why athletes from Skyriders always seem to do big tricks and have big difficulty, because that's what Dave loves to do. And he's so knowledgeable and so skilled at sort of talking athletes through the process of learning, through the builders and the progressions and the spotting techniques to maintain your aerial awareness. He communicates that really, really well. And Skyriders is just built to basically foster that kind of learning. There's all sorts of tools in there to get athletes up to skill and doing big tricks.
So back then, I said at the beginning of it that you were the first kind of viral sensation for trampoline. And I remember even before YouTube and everything, and I was getting stuff off LimeWire and things like that. Remember that? So that's when I first saw you, and I saw your the 10 triples in a routine on a super tramp. So whose idea was it to video that and push it and go viral? Because that wasn't a big thing back then.
No, it wasn't, and it definitely wasn't my idea. That was actually a Matt Turgeon production. So
really?
I feel like that's kind of that's the Skyriders way. Is you've got all these older athletes inspiring the younger athletes, sort of from the bottom up, but they're there to help out as well. They're helping coaching, they're helping throwing mats, but they're also helping just providing exposure in that way, right? Matt was equally excited as I was to watch a 10 triples routine as I was to do a 10 triples routine, and Dave was there like having a great time, like cheering us on and getting us pumped up, and giving routine ideas of how it might be easier to get to 10 triples this way or that way. Matt was definitely the one doing the filming. He did all the editing. He put it up on the internet. Like, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know how to do any of that kind of stuff at that time. I don't think a lot of people did. It just wasn't.
It wasn't a big thing. I can't even remember how I found it. I remember just being sent it or sent a link and all this. And like, who come up with the ideas? Like, the one you did with the Pilates ball.
Yeah.
Who come up with all those ideas?
I don't even remember. I know at Skyriders we had a couple like Pilates balls and dodgeballs lying around, and we'd either play dodgeball with them, or we do. You've probably seen this game before, where someone does a porpoise on the trampoline and someone else throws the ball to them, and they catch the ball in the porpoise, and you toss it back and forth. So I think it just came out of that. And one day I was thinking, I wonder, like, can I do a Rudy holding a Pilates ball? Can I do a double back? Like, what else can I do? Can I do a routine with it? Like, I don't know. Let's. And then
I love the approach that Skyriders has in that way. Did you find that when other countries came and trained there, that they were surprised at how relaxed it was, like how much fun you had instead of it being very, very strict and regimented?
Yeah, I think Skyriders is very different in that way, and it really it's a learning environment. It's a good learning environment for people who are motivated to learn and to succeed in the sport. And I found that people who view trampoline training as a bit more of like a social activity, or it's just a for fun thing, like they just don't progress as much or as well in that type of environment. Because Dave wants to work with people who want to work hard and are willing to put in the effort, right? As so many coaches do. You don't want to coach an athlete who's like half-hearted about the training or something like that. You want someone who's excited and ready to be there and ready to take some risks. So that's definitely the atmosphere in Skyriders is that, yes, it's a laid back place, but if you're going to be excited and motivated and ready to work hard, then you're going to get so much more back in return from that training environment.
Your kind of most successful period was probably like 2004, 2005 up to 2012 type of time. And that's when you had the likes of, you, Karen, Rosie, Sarah Charles, Marty Myers, you all trained together. Did that environment push you on a lot? Was that why you were so successful in that time? Because you're training with all those different people?
Yeah, absolutely. And even before that time, like Skyriders has always had good groups of athletes together, or good training groups. And I remember when I was like ages 14 to 16, we had another group of guys that, they didn't continue on into the national levels, but we were so competitive amongst the group, and we were all good friends. So, one guy would learn a full and no one else could do it in the group. And then all of a sudden the other three guys would be like, crap, I really want to learn that skill. So they'd work extra hard to catch up to the one guy who'd learned the trick first. And then they'd want to beat the other guy as well. So, someone would learn a Miller, and then everyone would play catch up to him. And I just feel like the group that you mentioned, Marty, Sarah, Rosie, Karen, Matt, Sam, like all those guys, we did that for each other in various ways, whether it was with form or with consistency or travel or tricks, right? Sam and I were absolutely, doing it with tricks for each other, whether through our add-on games or, she had this crazy video where she did 40 different triples, right? Because she just decided that sounds like an awesome idea. I want to do that, right? I don't think I've done 40 different triples, but, it was amazing to see Sam do it. And she was probably, part of that was probably like, I want to show up Jason somehow. Right?
You were so focused, and you could do all the tricks like you're saying there, and you're always pushing yourself. Did it kind of annoy you a little bit when the rules started changing and it was more focused towards time of flight? It was more focused towards HD and stuff, where it was probably in a strategy type of way. It was better to do something less difficult and clean and high. and you'd outscore someone who would do a front full half or a Rudy and Rudy, whatever. You know, like, did that annoy you a little bit about the sport?
It didn't annoy me. Like, I was well aware of it, but I don't think I was so focused on the like perfect strategy of competition and how to win competitions that it frustrated me in any way. I knew I had to jump higher, but jumping higher meant, you know, I'd probably have room for an extra flip somewhere or a few more points of DD. And, you know, if there's just more elements of the, I guess, more objective elements was always a good thing as well, I found, right? Because then form and execution became weighted a little bit less, or that subjectivity of the sport became a little bit less, and the objectivity became a little bit more, which I thought was good.
What about the rule and the Miller rule that came in 2005 because of you? When you did that, I can't remember, it's the Savignon World Cup or was it the Innocent Cup? Where you did 2 Millers in your final and then you went from first to fourth because they downgraded one of the Millers, said it was repeat.
So that one was a little annoying, but I guess I can't really be too upset about that because in that routine that you mentioned, it should have been Miller straight and Miller plus. I actually spaced on the last Miller for some whatever, or on the last Miller plus anyway, which turned it into more of a double full in, full out. And you know, 2 skills before it was more of a 1.5 in, 1.5 out. So they were pretty similar anyway. I definitely know it would have been nice to win that World Cup because it would have been my first win. And I think at that time, Yashiro Yuyama was on his World Cup winning streak as well. He went on 6 in a row. And I think this was like number 3 or 4. So I would have stopped him in his tracks if they'd given me 2 different skills, which I was pretty excited about. It may have been my first World Cup medal at that point too, if I had completed the right, or if I'd been given the skills. But yeah, that's okay. I know Dave and I have had a lot of conversations about that before, and we've slow-moed that video a whole lot. And
yeah, because at the time I was doing my international judging course, and I remember we slowed it down. We went, it's definitely 2 different skills, but they didn't give it. But it must be kind of cool, the notoriety, to know that you sparked that discussion at the FIG level, and they had to make a decision because you were so good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I did enjoy that, sort of like pushing the boundaries a little bit and making people think about trampoline in a different way or talk about it in a different way. That's one of the reasons after 2008, there was a World Cup in Portugal a month afterwards where I did Miller straight and Miller pike in my compulsory routine just to show that there can be different types of Millers. I don't think Miller pike had been done before. So I think I actually did Miller, I think they were back to back. It was Miller pike into Miller straight just because, you know, I was tired of practicing routines, the same old routines for months and months and months. I need to do something different.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I've always noticed about you. Did you always, because a lot of people, it's whatever it is to do the win. But I find a lot of time you did a lot of times what it was necessary to push the sport forwards. Like you do stuff like the most twists in a routine, I think at a World Cup you did once. So there's no triples, but loads of twists. You did a routine, your optional routine backwards at an American Championships. You know, you always pushed. Was that more important to you sometimes than winning the competition?
I would say so, but it wasn't. I think at that time I was quite young, and I was more interested almost in showing off than winning competitions necessarily, which isn't the best attitude to take. But I was being a young, cocky, 19 or 20-year-old or something like that, who was also having success at an international level. So I really got excited about thinking of creative ways about, what can I do next in competition that'll start turning heads or get people talking or this and that. Winning was always, or winning a medal or winning a World Cup was always in my head. Like I would have loved to have done both. But sort of that creative side of things was really, really exciting. And that's something I could work on every single day in the gym. Right. And that was, you can work on winning your World Cup medal every single day in the gym by doing your same old routine over and over and over again. But I just found it was a lot more exciting to start putting together weird routines or bigger tricks on a daily basis. And that really kept me going.
And do you find that that's a bit missing in the trampoline world at the moment? Like, I think you did a quadriphus pike, and maybe Jonas has done it, but not many other people have done it. And that kind of stuff we thought might be coming in, but it hasn't because of the different rules. Do you think that's a bit missing in trampoline at the moment, that bravado?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think just the way the rules are as well. Like people have sort of figured out sort of the ideal routine structure at that top senior men and top senior women level. So once you get to those levels, you don't see a lot of differentiation between the routines, which I love watching trampoline routines, period. So I still get a kick out of it, but it's because I know exactly what I'm watching, as you do, and as so many other trampoline athletes and coaches and judges do. But it would be nice to see people, testing out some bigger tricks. And I always thought that quad pike was the most obvious one to put in because we have bigger, better, bouncier equipment now. People have the height and the strength for it. And it's worth 2.7 on DD, which is 5/10 more than Rudy Trifis. And you branny it down instead of Rudy it down. It has so much potential for form. It's just, I think people got to suck it up and be a little bit braver and start really cranking them out.
That's what I'm saying. At the top level, I think it needs a new Jason Burnett to push that. Maybe like Ivan from Belarus, because he's so amazing. He might be able to push it a bit. But on that note, actually, and I've always thought it's interesting to see if you think the same thing, but in the difficulty in DMT, you get a lot more for a straight shape than you do for a pike shape. And trampoline's the same. Same as in when you put twists into doubles, you can get 0.4 instead of 0.1. And twists into triples, you get an extra 0.6 per half twist instead of. Do you think something like that would push the trampoline forwards?
Yeah, I think it would just bring back a little bit more variety in the skills, because I know we've definitely moved away from things like half full straight and full straight to full half pike and full half or 1.5 half pike. And they may not be, the skills themselves may not be that much more difficult than one another, but when you think about or include things like height and maintaining height, it's much harder to do that when you're going straight skill to straight skill, because you just have less time to make adjustments, or less room to make adjustments for that ideal landing, for that ideal push then out of the bed. Whereas with a skill with a position, you can get tighter or more open to adjust that rotation to then
go into the next
for the ideal, entrance into the bed and push out again. So I think for that reason, straight skills are harder because they jeopardize your time of flight and your control a little bit more than a skill with a position or a pike position in. And it would just, I don't know. Sorry, continue.
So anyway, going back to your career, and the Beijing cycle was your most successful time. You were turning up to World Cups with a name. People were paying attention to you. Acrobatic sports loved you. Were your favorite person in the world. Did it feel different when you're going to those events? Did you feel the notoriety, or did you feel the pressure?
I definitely felt it, but I enjoyed it as well. I think it was feeding that kind of cocky attitude I had at the time, which, may have not made me the favorite person of maybe some of the other athletes on the floor. Unfortunately, it's not a great attitude to have as a person, but going into a competition so full of confidence like that definitely helped me perform well, because I wasn't thinking about, the mistakes I might make. I wasn't self-conscious about my routines or my style or my form, my DD or anything. Here I was just thinking, I'm great and I'm going to do a great job now, right? So it helped on the competition. Not the greatest attitude to have, towards your teammates or something like that. I think it rubs some people the wrong way. But when you're out on the floor like that, performing for yourself, I think it is helpful.
Did you find that you maybe weren't disliked? I didn't get that impression ever, but from what you're saying there, did you find that sometimes you didn't make friends easily, or?
I've always been a bit of a shy person growing up. So there was that. And like David mentioned, like, you should smile a little bit more. You look a little too serious out there. So I was, and I wasn't always the best at reading social cues. So it made me start to wonder, like, am I rubbing people the wrong way? Like, am I too this or to that? Or like, I wasn't really sure. I was never really sure.
What was it like in that kind of period? That was when the emergence of the Chinese gymnasts was happening. And did that shock you a bit? Because obviously where your situation is or where your placing is in the world, and you were kind of marginalizing yourself off the Japanese or all that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden these Chinese were there doing mental difficulty, not always and super high, not always finishing the routines, but pushing it a bit. Did that kind of shock you a bit and make you kind of second guess yourself?
Yeah, like sort of the first couple of waves where they were becoming competitive, but I think we're still sort of in line with what myself and some of the other young seniors at the time were doing. And like, we were able to challenge each other. That was fine. But it was when people like Dong Dong and Lu Chunglong came along and started winning everything. I remember, like, you get that little feeling in the pit of your stomach. Like, it's a nerve-wracking thing. It's a little intimidating because you're like, wow, these guys, like, they never fail. Their routines are always clean. There's very like little room for you to make an error now. And that kind of ate away at your self-confidence a little bit. And maybe that was like a lack in my own mental game, that I was allowing myself to be influenced by other competitors' routines, which, really that shouldn't influence my performance at all, because, I can't change what they do and they can't change what I do, or they shouldn't be able to. But I definitely remember, seeing some of those young guys come up and become really strong and become really successful. And, you start to worry, like, I want to be on the top 3, but there's fewer and fewer spots or places or opportunities for me to get there now. I think it took me a long time sort of throughout my career to become comfortable with that. And I know definitely near the end, it went from a stressful thing or something that made me nervous or scared even, to an exciting thing, because I guess closer to the end of my career, 2016 and beyond, I was really starting to enjoy seeing sort of these young guys come up and do some big tricks, some really high routines, get the big scores, because, you're excited about the new generation. You're excited about what they can bring to the table and how they're going to push the sport, which is really exciting.
You reach a level of maturity, don't you, where you realize it has to move on, and you're not the be all and end all anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe that's exactly it, right? Like, trampoline was 100% my life growing up, through my 20s. And when people started challenging that, it made me nervous, because that was my identity. That's what brought me confidence, right? And if someone could, there are people who are better than me now, it diminishes that for me in some way, shape, or form. But definitely as I've grown up and matured and found other things in my life that I love and enjoy and want to do, trampoline is still, it will always be a major part of my life. But just because some people are better at it than I am, or, I'm not winning medals now, that doesn't mean that's not a bad thing. That's a fantastic thing, right? That the next generation has come along and, is beating the records of the past and stuff like that. I'm still excited to see, someone compete more than an 18 in competition, or push a 20.6 or 7 in training or something like that. Like, that'll be an amazing day. I cannot wait to see who ends up doing that. And I feel like people like Dylan Schmidt or Ruben Padilla, I always get
it. Yeah.
They're throwing out massive triples now with Trifrudio Pike as like the third skill of the optional. I'm still waiting to see either one of them do quads. I think Ruben actually did put some up on Instagram the other day.
Probably, yeah.
But regardless, like, those are going to be the guys who are going to be able to hit 18.8 and beyond, right? I'm sure some of the Russian athletes could do it now, but I feel like they're stuck in that system where, we're going to find the ultimate formula that works to win medals, and we don't need to necessarily do more than that, right? We don't need to do more DD. If we can do an 18.2 and it's going to get you on the podium 9 times out of 10, that's what we're going to do, right?
It depends what your motivation is. Is it to push the sport forwards and just to be like a name, or is it to be a medal winner? And depends. Sometimes not everyone remembers the medal winners, but people remember the innovators. So, so going into Beijing, obviously then, did your focus change, and like, instead of being Yuyama and Satomura to beat, was it all of a sudden the Chinese? Did that change your game? Did that change your strategy?
I definitely remember thinking that the Chinese athletes were the ones to beat at that point. Yash and Tetz were still very much on my radar. And I think Ushakov was really starting to come into his own at that time as well. So there's lots of people who, I knew I had a chance to beat, but also had a very good chance of beating me as well. Definitely felt like a bit of an underdog, but it didn't change my strategy at all. Dave and I had always planned big routines from the start, but Beijing was kind of an interesting experience because we planned for a big routine for the final. That was really the only plan going in, but I wanted to be a little bit more conservative in the preliminary round because I just wanted to get through. I figured I'd be nervous. It's your first Olympics. Of course it was nervous. So I thought, let's do something a little bit lower DD, something I can, almost guarantee I'll finish every time with decent form. And that's how we'll get through to the final. But that didn't happen because in my compulsory routine, had a terrible first routine. I think it was 14th place out of 16 athletes out of that first routine. And Dave was like, Dave's very blunt. So he's like, that wasn't very good at all. Like, you can't do this conservative routine anymore. Like, you're not going to make it. You've got so many points to make up for. So he's like, you got to do the big routine right now. So we had the two DD skills in the compulsory at that time. So I didn't have all my options to work with. So we couldn't do the finals routine that we had planned, but we basically made up a new routine sort of on the spot. Similar to the finals routine. So I'd had a bunch of practice at something similar, but we increased DD by 0.8 sort of on the spot within the you know, the 20 minutes you had in between prelim or the compulsory and the optional, did some visualization, you know, got into the zone, and then came back and, you know, just through, you know, a whole lot of luck, but also a whole lot of determination that I've got to do the best routine of my life right now, or else that's it. First Olympics gone.
Did I hear that you went back into the training hall and got on the trampolines, or did you just stay in the competition hall and think about the routine?
No, I did go into the training hall, which was sort of outside or next to the Olympic venue, so different room and like a hallway separating sort of the buildings. I wasn't allowed to get back on the trampoline to practice anymore. That would have led to disqualification because warm-up was over. But I was visualizing this new routine and definitely lost track of time, just trying to get into the zone. Dave ended up like sprinting into the room, kicking the door open and say, "Hey, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're up." So, and I remember looking at the television monitor that had the competition on live, and Tetsuya was on right before me, and he's already halfway through his routine. You know, I'm up next and I'm in a different room. So we start sprinting. We leave the training hall back into the Olympic Stadium. We had to leap over some of the gymnastics podium equipment to like get to the center of the arena where the trampolines were. And, you know, we get there just as Tets is walking off, and he's got a big smile on his face. Like, he's done a good routine. He's through to the final, but I'm there like clutching my heart and catching my breath and thinking, oh my goodness, like I almost missed my turn at the Olympics and I've already done a terrible first routine. Like, the only option here is to do something great. Right. And that was really the final thought in my head before I got on the trampoline, presented to the judges and started jumping, is that this needs to be great right now. And yeah,
probably the fact that you weren't sitting there thinking about it, you know, in the Olympic arena, and you were rushing and everything, it probably took your focus away from, oh my God, this needs to be good. Yeah, it probably maybe chilled you down a bit, did it?
I think it wiped away any negative thoughts that could have been there, because I was just reacting at that point. I had to run, I had to get to the trampoline, I had to get on the trampoline to start doing a routine within 10 or 15 seconds. So there's no time for that sort of negative self-talk or self-thought where you start wondering like, ooh, what if my trip travels to the side and I have a bad setup for my next skill? Or, you know, what if I crash on skill 3 or 5 or whatever? There's none of that. It was just crap, gotta go, gotta do a good routine. That's it. Like, and
what did it feel like at the end? Was it relief or was it elation? Or
I remember giving Dave this look and like the typical 21-year-old Jason, like cocky attitude smile, where I just looked over at him and like gave him a shrug, like, of course that's how it was going to happen. Like, I planned this from the beginning. I think Dave was just laughing, shaking his head there, like, you idiot. Like,
it makes good. But what did it feel like when you realized that you were in the Olympic final? I think you did in 7th place, didn't you?
Yeah, I reached the Olympic final in 7th, and that was a huge relief because, like I mentioned, I had to climb about 2.5 points up from my compulsory routine within that optional. So really still wasn't sure if I would make it even after a really strong second routine. But I remember watching sort of the scoreboard pop up and sort of myself maintaining, you know, that top 8 ranking, even though I was pretty close to the bottom, but it was a huge sense of relief. And then really once I'd done that, I was just so excited to be in the final. Like, that was the goal from the beginning, right? It wasn't come to the Olympics and have a good showing, get a good experience. It was, no, come to the Olympics, make the finals, shot at the medals. That's exactly what I wanted. And I think I was really excited that I'd done it in a bit of a unique, albeit stupid way to get there, right?
Oh, you got there. It doesn't matter how you get there.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so I got there with a story to tell. So
was there ever any pressure, because every Skyriders gymnast who's gone to their first Olympics has made the final, and well, they've made the final, and most of them have medaled at their first Olympics, apart from Rosie, but she went on to get 2 golds, so that's fine. Was that a bit of pressure, knowing that like that background of Skyriders, the success, and everyone's looking at you?
You know, I don't think I really thought of it that way. That thought just never really popped into my head, that, you know, I was sort of, you know, building on the legacy of Skyriders. It was, to me, it was like I'm building the legacy of myself still, right? Like, I'm still proving myself to the world at this point. So, you know, that's what I'm here to do. And I'm not worried about the reputation or what people are going to think afterwards, unless I just wanted to go out there and do something great for myself at that point.
Were you happy at that stage? I think back then the finals were on a different day, weren't they? They weren't on the same day as qualification like they are now. Was that good for you to kind of chill out and get away from the panic and the rush?
Yeah, that was great because I think I always in London and in Rio. I think I didn't do the finals in Rio, but in London I just remember it felt like a very long day to do a full prelims and then a finals competition. Like, it was just, and it's something that we don't really do at World Cups or World Championships aside from like the semifinal. But even still, that's, it's 2 routines instead of 3. So it just felt like something I wasn't quite prepared for, doing the entire competition in one day. And I just felt a little bit more fatigued. So definitely a little bit of a warning for any athletes out there who go to the 2021 Olympics or beyond. Like, that's a good thing to train for, is that you're going to have lengthier competition, and the pressure only becomes more and more as you progress through it. So yeah, I remember in Beijing being able to finish prelims and think like, I get to go home and sleep and eat food now. That's awesome. Like, I need to recharge because I've literally spent all I have on this day. Like, I need to go get some more resources in me.
So what was it like on the morning of your Olympic final? Like, when you woke up, did you feel the gravity of the day, or were you chilled?
I was excited. I wasn't chill, but I wasn't feeling the gravity so much either. Like, I think that's really what I remember from like those days in my prime, is that I was always excited to get on the trampoline, and like, competition was just an opportunity for me to show off, like to do something cool and to do something that people are going to remember. And I think that's probably an attitude that David instilled in me anyway, right? Is do something big, do something awesome, like get people talking about it. So competing, that's what competing was for me. It was the chance to do something really cool and unique and something that people are going to remember. So that's the attitude I took with me into that final day in Beijing.
Was there any ever doubt in your mind that you wouldn't go and absolutely smash that routine? Like, was that always in your head that you just it's not going to fail, it's going to be perfect?
No, I definitely had my doubts, but I still have vivid memories of leading up to those games, a couple months before, where I'd be training at Skyriders and I'd hit a routine that was great, like very similar to what I did in the final in Beijing. And I remember in training thinking like, that's all I got to do. And like, I'm a good shot for a medal in Beijing. Like, and I remember having multiple experiences like that in training, maybe it's generous, maybe like 3, 4, 5 times I'd hit one of those really great routines a couple months before the games. But it was enough experience doing that to let me know that like, this is a real thing. Like, this is possible. It's, it's not like I was dreaming of some fantastical routine that, in a perfect world I might be able to do, but never actually did. No, I was getting like those real world experiences of doing a great routine in training that I could tell myself, you do that at the Olympics, you'll achieve what you want to achieve. Right.
So when you hit it that day and you finished your routine, did you know then you had the medal? Like, I know you were cocky and everything back then, but did you still let yourself believe that you had a medal at that stage, knowing you had hit that routine?
No, 100% not. I knew it was a good routine. It felt great. And I know, like, as soon as I landed, I was like, crap, I wish that Miller had stayed in the middle, because that was the only trick that left the box at the time. And I was also thinking like, why am I always doing bent arm Millers? I can do a straight arm Miller. Like, it's just kind of like, you get a little lazy, you get a little excited to finish the routine, and you crank it around with bent arms, where you could, I know it's not a deduction, but you could just leave a better impression with a straight arm Miller. Yeah. But I got off the trampoline. I was super pumped I'd done a good routine, high-fiving Dave, really excited. I got the score though at 40.7, and I was kind of expecting the score to be higher. It just felt like a better routine to me, but it was the second routine of the final. I know Mikolaj Kazak had gone right before, and he had scored about a point lower, but he also had significantly lower DD at the time. So I was kind of wondering, I didn't know what the judges were going to do with that yet, or do with the rest of the athletes. And we had other athletes like Yuri Nikitin was coming, Alexander Rusakov, Lu Changlong, and Dong Dong, and Tetsuya as well. So like, all guys that any one of them could have been on the podium, any one of them could have won those Olympics as well, right? So I got off and saw the score and thought, it might be good enough, but it could easily be a 5th place as well. So
like, there was a lot of talk about that after, in terms of like, a lot of people thought, online and everything, that maybe if you had been up second to last, third to last, that maybe at that stage, because of where you fall in the order, they expect the best people to be at the end. They warm up the judges. Do you think you would have got a higher score if you were towards the end?
I have no idea, but I know that's sort of an idea that Dave believes in as well. And he was always, he always really pushed me to focus on, pick a routine and stick with it. Let's, go 6 months out, do it at all the World Cups, win a World Cup or two, get on the podium, like do whatever you can, like prove that you can be number one in some way, shape, or form. And you can do that by winning a World Cup, being on the podium, breaking into finals in third place or something. Show that you're like one of those top 3 contenders, right? Which was something, I did every now and then, but definitely didn't do it consistently. Whereas I think, I can't remember if it was either Liu Changlong or Dong Dong who won the World Cup before the Olympics. Both of them had won, World Cups leading up to the games. I'm sure at least one of them was a world champion or had been on the podium at world championships before the games. So they had just done a better job at sort of building that reputation and building in that expectation that, hey, these guys are actually the best. So, where I had done, I'd been on the podium a couple times at World Cups and maybe second or third leading up to the games, but never that top spot, never as consistently as some of the other athletes. So I'm sure when the judges saw me step up on the trampoline, especially in 7th place as well, they're like, this guy's pretty good, but we expect more from the other guys coming after him. So,
and that's probably where you're talking about the objective stuff, and the scoring is probably better now because there's only two execution scores that count, and everything else is objective. So, like, it probably would be better for you now, but still it was at the time. So how did it feel then, waiting and seeing everyone slot in underneath you? I remember seeing your face on the screen and you were like, oh, couldn't believe it.
It was like an unbelievable moment, but that was like, I love that part too. Like that's one of my favorite parts of competition, because you're done, like all the pressure's off you. You've done as much as you can, especially when you've done a good routine that you're proud of and happy with, then you can't really ask for more than that. It doesn't matter where you finish. But then just the icing on the top is, once again, I feel like I'm being cocky right now. The icing on the top is watching people slot in underneath your score.
No, it's true. Because that's kind of, it builds attention and it builds the excitement for viewers as well, because that's really exciting to watch, Yeah,
for sure. So when that's your name on the board, that people are just coming up a little bit short of every time, like, I remember there's a photo where I'm just like clutching my head because I think it was on the podium. I think that's where that photo was there was it Liu and Dong Dong were left, but I was still holding top spot. So I knew I had an Olympic medal at that point, which really going into the games, that was my goal. It wasn't to win the Olympics. It was just to get on the podium, because I guess I wasn't as confident in my ability to win an Olympic Games just yet, but I thought I could get on the podium. So that was that moment there. But then, it was a huge shock to see Dong Dong come up just a 10th short at 40.6, because I watched his routine. I'd seen him do like a million great routines before. This one didn't look any different to me. I was like, well, there you go. There's your 41 points or whatever it was going to be. And I think he felt that way too, because I watched that video a lot afterwards, and it looks like his face dropped a little bit when he came up just 1/10 short. But
when you watched, like, I don't know if you'd be able to tell the truth or not, but when you watched Liu Changlong's routine, what did you think? Did you think I've beaten that, or were you not sure, or what way did you feel when you saw that routine? Because I know, as a spectator and most other people, we thought he would have gone in underneath you.
You know what? I kind of thought that from the very beginning, because the mistake, like, we made the same mistake. It's just I made the traveling error on my last skill where he made it on his second skill. So I remember seeing that and thinking the judges might carry that mistake, sort of throughout the rest of the routine and hold it against him a little bit. But I've watched that routine countless times now, just to see, like, I've always really appreciated the way Liu jumped. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. And the thing that he did that was so great is, yes, he made a traveling error on his second skill, but he didn't give away any points for it. He pushed just as hard into that trip tuck, and he got it back to the middle, and then he made no more mistakes, right? Yeah. So sure, take the traveling deduction, but he didn't do anything else wrong afterwards, right? He worked his butt off to save that routine, and it worked out for him, which is great. So
after that, obviously, like, if you had retired at that point, you would have probably been happy with your silver medal. What pushed you to go on and do the other Olympics? So you did you did London, you made the final, and you did Rio. What was the motivation after that to keep going?
I wanted to be like Karen. I think that was her third Olympics, and she had won a medal at every Olympics. And I was thinking, Karen can go to 3, I can go to 3. And I'd already worked out the math. Like, if I'm, 21 in 2008. That means I'm 25 in 2012 and 29 in 2016. That all works. That's, a 3 games career. That's totally within reason. I'm not too old. I can still be at peak for, I could be at peak for all those games if I stayed healthy and didn't have any injuries. And that was just it. And like I said, I wanted to be like Karen. I wanted to medal at every single one, and I wanted to improve on those medals at every single one.
And how did the other Olympics build up to compare to Beijing? What were they like in comparison?
Well, London, I definitely felt a lot more pressure leading into London because I was a medal favorite at the time. Because I'd won the medal in Beijing and I'd performed well on a World Cup circuit leading up to those games, I was getting a lot more attention from like the Canadian Olympic Committee, and I was sort of in the spotlight leading up to the games, which I enjoyed. I loved that attention, but it definitely made me think like there's a lot more expected of me here, or just getting into the final of the Olympics isn't enough anymore, or just coming 10th isn't enough anymore. Like I'm expected to be on the podium. And that definitely ate away at me a little bit, and definitely played a role in the crash that I had in the final of the 2012 Olympics as well.
How did that feel afterwards to crash in the final of the Olympics?
Very disappointing, of course, but I was quite surprised, just because in the 2012 games, I did really out Triffus pike, half Triffus pike, to very close to the end deck, but I was 100% committed to taking off for the Triff pike for the third skill. But my legs buckled. I didn't expect it. It must have been just because I was so close to the end and did this weird little side summy almost to a kill bounce afterwards. And I was shocked. I really did not expect that to happen. I was fully attempting to do a Triff pike and it turned into a 3-foot high side summy. Like it was very,
I remember.
Luckily, like no pain, no injury, no nothing, but the trampoline just sucked away my bounce and killed my power. And that was it.
We'll blame the Gaufei trampolines on that.
Yeah.
Because it was your tramp, you'd be back in the middle.
Yeah.
And then in Rio, you were plagued with injuries before Rio.
Yeah, so Rio was especially challenging because in 2014, I tore my ACL on a crash at Skyriders, practicing an optional routine right before the 2014 World Championships. And I was upset to miss the World Championships, but my real motivation for getting healthy again was to compete at the Pan Am Games, which was going to be hosted in Toronto, so my hometown, in the following July, I guess. So it was only about 8 months, maybe 10 months after my ACL tear. So that, as soon as I tore my ACL and had surgery, got onto the road to recovery, I was like, all right, how do I compete at Pan Ams? That's what I want to do. And my team of therapists and my coaches, S&C and Trampoline, we worked our butts off to try and get me ready for that. And we did. It's just, we were also focused and also determined to get back quickly, that we came back too quickly. And I was probably back on a trampoline after 5 months of recovery after an ACL tear. I couldn't really do much more than a back and a branny until the 7-month mark because my knee would swell and get very painful. But at about 7 months into the 8-month mark, I could start building up height and skills. But that just didn't allow the ACL to heal properly. And at we competed at Pan Am Games, placed 4th, which I was a little disappointed with. But then in September, following September, so it's a couple months after, my ACL retore as I was doing an optional routine. There was like a wobble in my knee that I felt, which wasn't enough to throw me off balance. I finished the routine. I didn't have any pain because there's no nerve endings in your ACL to cause pain. So I finished the training afterwards, like nothing was wrong. And I don't even remember my knee swelling all that much, but I just remember, every other practice from there on out, I'd have like this weird wobble and this weird instability. And then my hamstring would get really, really tight and really, really sore. And I have to take a week off to rehab it and get a bunch of acupuncture to release the tension in my hamstring. And then I think it was 4 days before we left for the World Championships in November, I had an MRI and got the MRI results back, which then showed us that I'd torn my ACL. So I'd been jumping without it for a few months already, been having a lot of instability. And at that point, that was a huge shock to my system as well, because I knew what an ACL recovery looked like. It was already 8 months off that I didn't want to take. And now we're back at square one where another surgery is needed, probably more than 8 months recovery since we went way too fast the first time. But I was just thinking at that time, I've been able to train kind of. This Olympic qualification is coming up in 4 days. Basically, we're leaving. The plane is booked. Like, the competition it's happening. Yeah. I might as well just go and see what happens. So I confided in my osteopath and my athletic therapist about the injury, but that's basically the only people I told about it. And we just worked out a solution to try and stabilize the knee for 4 more days to see what would happen. And through taping and through some light bracing, we were able to stabilize the knee enough to get through that competition and qualify for the 2016 Olympics, which was, once again, I want to say it's a highlight of my career, or one of the highlights, but it was also just a very painful, challenging, disappointing time for my career as well, because without an ACL, without that stability, I was really capped at 80% of what I knew I was capable of. And it was very painful trying to reach that 80% mark as well. So I just remember months and months and months of taping my knee, bracing the knee so that I could train, but also dealing with constant pain and swelling and taking time off. And the uncertainty was probably the hardest part, not knowing, whether I'd make it through the rest of the qualification process at the Olympic test event. Is my knee going to hold up, one practice to the next? Am I going to have some weird crash because of instability and damage more parts of my body? It was about 10 months of that. Was
there pressure? Because at the time, the male program in Canada had got a bit weak, and there wasn't that many men who could probably hit the qualification standard. Was there pressure on you to be ready to get that space for the Olympic, for the Gym Canada?
There may have been, but once again, I was doing it all for me. 3 Olympics was sort of my plan from the beginning, and there was no derailing me from that thought or that goal. Even with 2 ACL tears and not enough time to recover. So really, I was just working with my therapist and with my coach Dave, who I told after the World Championships, after we'd met that first qualification standard for the Olympics, said, "All right, here's the deal. Here's what's going on. This is what we have to work around."
Looking back at your career, 3 Olympics, you must have a lot of pride and a lot of just feel great about your career and about what you've achieved.
Yeah, I've been very, very happy with my career. I don't want to phrase this. It's been difficult dealing with I guess a crash in the final in 2012 and an injury in 2016. But after taking some time and looking back, I've learned to really appreciate how, yes, I've done 3 Olympics. They've been 3 very different experiences. They've taught me very different lessons and, challenged me in very different ways. And even though, I didn't get a medal at all 3 games like the original plan was, there's so much value in the experiences that I had from them that are going to shape the way I approach life and approach challenges going forwards. There's tremendous value in that.
And one little more thing, because you've been quite honest in this interview, do you ever reflect back on the World Championships? And because probably made it as a sore point, but just missing that World Final all the time, was that how did that affect you? Because obviously Olympics is great and everything but the Worlds are there a lot more often, and that's on a yearly thing. You want to make the World Final. What do you think kept you out of the World Finals that time?
I think it was just a lack of focus. World Championships were obviously a big thing, but I never placed the same amount of importance on a World Championships as I did in Olympic Games. I thought very much in 4-year cycles, and the most important World Championships to me was the one before the Olympics and the top 16 rank before the Olympics. That was always the goal. It would have been of course I thought about being at a final at a World Championships and being on a podium or winning. But when I look back, they're not sore spots that I never really got there. When I think back over my career, the big standout moments are Beijing, London, Rio, and the different things I experienced those Olympics. It can be tricky sometimes because I've grown up in a gym with Rosie McLennan and Karen Coburn, who've had so much success at all levels of competition, from Pan Am, Worlds, Olympic, right? And it's tricky to compare myself to them because some days I'll feel like I had a really amazing career, but then I'll think well, Rosie won 2 Olympics, she's won a couple of world championships, she's literally medaled at every World Championship since 2005, won who knows how many World Cups, won Pan, she just did everything right. And that's, she made phenomenal decisions, trained incredibly hard, worked really well with Dave. She that's all her hard work coming to fruition. But, it's tough to compare yourself to someone like that. I've had a great career. She's had a great career, but sometimes you just have to stop comparing yourself to the people around you. Be happy for what you've experienced.
Well, when I told everyone I was interviewing you today, so many people said to me, "Oh my God, he was my hero from the beginning." So many. Do you realize you have that effect? You were that you had that effect on a lot of people, that it made them love trampolining a lot?
I heard it sort of throughout my career, but never really believed it. I always kind of doubted it. I think it was, just something I was self-conscious about, is that, since I was a shy kid, I was bullied in school. I wasn't, someone who was looked up to, growing up regularly, right? So that to find myself in that role, I questioned it a lot. So
yeah,
maybe if I, just accepted it, that I was a role model for younger athletes, maybe I would have acted better and been, a better role model, or just, reached out to younger athletes more often, engaged with the community more sort of in those years while I was in my prime. Because I think I was, maybe a little standoffish, had that cocky attitude, was competing for me, and I think that helped on the competition floor. But like I said, maybe in a, is he a nice guy kind of thing, didn't work out so well.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story, because at the 2005 World Championships, the closing banquet is when I met you. And after talking to you and finding out about, because I was from Ireland and we had no experience in trampoline, and we did practically nothing, but I really was enthusiastic, and I saw it Worlds and I thought, this is amazing. I got chatting to you, and then I decided I like the sound of Skyriders so much. In 2006, I went over to Canada and spent time in Skyriders, and that's given me my bug, and that's where I learned a lot about coaching, and now I'm coaching an international standard. So if it wasn't for that meeting and that trip to Canada, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now. So that's the kind of level, and probably stuff you don't think about, but that's the kind of level of influence that your career and your notoriety had back then, I think, on a lot of people. So it was amazing.
That's all. I really appreciate you sharing that. That makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside, because I definitely wasn't, that wasn't me thinking, how can I help out the community? How can I give back to the community? But I'm glad, even though if it wasn't top of mind, there was still some good that, came, and that people were inspired by, if it was just the trampoline tricks and routines I was doing, that spread the love for trampoline, around the world. That makes me feel really, really good.
So obviously we're not getting any younger, and trampolines, or competing trampolines, not always going to be in your life. What are your future plans for after you finish your trampoline career?
So they're still a little foggy. Like I said, trampoline has been my sole focus for a long period of time. I'll absolutely stay involved in trampoline in a coaching or judging capacity. I do a little bit of both right now. But what I'd like to do, definitely what I'd like to move into, is doing stunts in film and television. So I've had a bit of experience with that in Toronto. I've been out to Vancouver and done a few jobs out here. But I've had to shift my focus in that direction. And that's been really exciting, because it's, my acrobatic ability definitely comes in handy for that. But, I need to learn about different fighting styles and learn fight choreography and how to sell a punch on film, and, how to fall and make it look messy, instead of, I can't point my toes and keep my legs straight as I'm, falling down anymore. That's not what anybody wants to see. So there's a lot of, physical changes that I'm practicing and working on, and new skill sets. And, I found a really great training group out here that are able to teach me a lot. So that's been really, really exciting. I also work with a high performance center in Toronto called CSIO, the Canadian Sports Institute of Ontario. And I do some social media stuff with them, working with various national teams. We collect regular content of them working out, either in the gym or on their field of play, and basically relate how the sports center helps those athletes train and prepare for international meets, and how they represent Canada proudly sort of on the world stage. So I love working with, different teams, having a camera in my hand, but also sort of getting to be behind the camera as well, which is something new for me, which is really, really exciting. So sort of going down both of those pathways, and just hoping that one becomes a little bit more prominent than the other, one leads to a little bit more success, and just figure out which direction I'm meant to go as we go.
I don't think we'll see you in some capacity for a long time yet, then, on the trampoline world, probably, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll definitely be around.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's over an hour now, so I better probably wrap it up. But it's been fantastic talking to you, Jason. And you've done a lot for the sport, as I said to you. And your career has been phenomenal to follow and to watch, and to know the person as well behind the achievement has been quite cool, because it just makes it more real and more tangible. So thanks very much for joining me today. And hopefully we'll see you soon at a competition or some kind of thing in the future when all this COVID and everything ends.
Yes, I know we're all looking forward to it, and I definitely appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. And it's always great to share the stories behind the competitions and the medals and this and that, and hopefully it inspires some younger athletes to go on and do great things.
Yeah, hopefully it does. Well, I'll talk to you soon, Jason. Thanks very much.
Sounds good, Simon. Cheers.